Well, we're here in Boston visiting the North Bennet Street School. It's an amazing school that teaches a lot of different trades, but one of the things that we're going to focus on primarily is the cabinet making program that they have. For me, I'm very interested in this school because for 20 years I've been enthralled with the antiques. So we're going to talk about that as well as their other programs, which are bookbinding, violin making and repairs,
jewelry making, piano technology, preservation carpentry.
That's right. And that was featured on This Old House. You guys did some work.
Yes, we do. We often do work for those kind of programs, and also for historic homes and historic New England. And it's similar to the other programs in our school. It's a lot about practical application and not about classroom work. So we actually go and restore homes and buildings for historic associations and that kind of thing.
Its original history was to provide vocational training for the surge of immigrants that were coming in to the Boston area.
The word industrial in 1880 doesn't mean factory. It means industry as in the product of one's hands. If one is industrious, one is working productively. That's the industrial school. You don't get the feeling that we were providing workers for industry.
See, I was wondering about that because 1885 and then into the early 1900s was the real boom of the Industrial Revolution.
The history of manual arts training really took a turn right around 1870s through the maybe mid 1880s. In Sweden at the same time, there was a system developed called Sloyd, which was similarly engaged in the process of taking the apprenticeship skills and teaching them in an academic setting, breaking down what you need to know to be a cabinet maker into a series of exercises graduated in complexity so that you start to learn with basic tools and you get more and more complex. So they're breaking down all these various skills and putting them in a pedagogical order instead of just you go apprentice with John Smith and you'll be working on what he's working on today, and tomorrow you'll work on what he's working on tomorrow. And depending on what he's working on, that's what you'll learn, and you'll learn it in that order. And you'll
versus having a curriculum.
Right. So the Swedish system, the Sloyd system, wasn't so much to train people for industry as the Russian system was. It was really designed because they thought that manual skills and craft skills were good to develop as general educational experiences because it both taught you gave you a kind of a moral sensibility. It also gave you thinking skills. They very much, they saw the connection between hand skills and brain skills. They didn't see them as disconnected, that you would really learn to think in a different way, in a more profound way, if you were also using your hands. I think the connection between hand skills and brain skills isn't readily understood by people that don't have hand skill training. But once you do have hand skill training, you realize the extent to which your brain is engaged.
Right.
Even in the actual carving or the conceptual processes that take place when you're thinking about how to accomplish a thing. I mean, there are a lot of issues in the making of furniture that are very theoretical. Over the past 5 years or so is that our applicant pool seems to be getting younger. Well, our median age for students in the school has been around 32, and now it's going lower, and might be even late 20s, which is interesting. And many of our students are second career students. They've tried to be lawyers or insurance agents or whatever it might be, desk job, and it didn't work out for one reason or another. It's really a school for people that have explored other alternatives and decided that they need to work with their hands for whatever reason and make things. It's an inability to find a meaningful way to spend their lives if they're working at a desk. I'd say most of the students here are impelled to do the latter, to work with their hands to create physical objects. And that's where they find their joy and self-actualization. And most of them have tried the alternative. And so in that way, we're not different at all from an art school. It's a subtle difference, the difference between the people here who need to work with their hands and the people who study design and need to express their own individual personality in each object that's created.
So your students come into your cabinet making classes. What are their general goals or desires for the future?
The typical goal would be to be a self-employed furniture maker working on a commission basis to create things and make a living at it. That's probably the overriding goal.
Now the cabinet making program is 2 years, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In the course of that 2 years, what type of business training or marketing?
That's a good.
Do you do any of that?
That's a good question. We do try to run a business course to teach them basic business skills like introductory accounting principles, marketing, and that kind of thing. I'd say our success has been spotty, in part because we have jewelers and piano technicians and things like that, so one business course doesn't fit all. And in part because the students are so bent on spending time in the shop that they find the business aspects distracting.
Yeah.
You don't really learn business skills until you really need them. It's like, it's hard to do that book learning when you're here when you could be out making furniture. So it's a combination of that. We haven't quite figured out how best to teach business skills, and the students are less interested than they might be. But it's something we all think about constantly.
Do they come back after a few years being out there and say, you know,
the best business teachers are the returning graduates.
Yeah.
That say, you know, here's what you really need to learn. And so I think that it is a struggle sometimes for people to take on all of the business aspects of making furniture, because their personalities, that's not the natural for them. That's not the comfort mode for them, is selling or selling themselves. And you know, in a way I think we can teach the technique, we can teach cabinet making, but we can't teach people to be an extrovert. And so sometimes you see people that come through the school here and you say they're going to be great. And it's not necessarily because they have great technique, because they might have even slightly less professional ability than another person, but they've got that combination of extroversion or
the intangibles.
Yeah, some kind of a charismatic aspect to them, of the way they interact with the other students, that you can tell that they have that other part that is so difficult to instill in anybody, and maybe impossible, I don't know.
I think one of the things that we would really like to do, since we focus primarily on period and antique furniture, is see some of the processes that the students go through in building these pieces, the skills that they're taught, and the techniques that they use. And then we'll take a look at some finished pieces, and I think it'll be really great, really fascinating stuff. All right, so when we get back, we're going to take a walk through the shop and take a look at the cabinet making area. So we'll be right back.